want to say, you know, JJ, my next guest, and you, if you want to join, is someone who's been a part of this movement since she was a teenager. I mean, her history, Kathleen Marden, goes back to the original, I would say, well-known abduction case. She is the niece, for everyone watching,
yes,
Betty and Hill.
My wife and I had the pleasure of meeting her. We feel outstanding work that she is doing. And for practical reasons, she's part of that family that really broke the umbilical cord with doubt that people had in the 1950s and 60s as to contact with other levels of intelligence.
Right. I mean, I think people like Kathleen, Travis Walton, even John Mack, there's so many people that stood up for truth, because this is true, not just for them, but it's a reality that the mainstream has yet to bring into their realm of experience. And so Kathleen, is Kathleen here, Neil? It's okay. Oh, are you?
I am here. Yes.
Oh, hi, Kathleen. I'm just joined for a little while with Dr. Hurtak. He happened to be passing by. I thought I'd...
Well, here at our offices in Northern Arizona, I think so highly of your work, really. It's not only super positive, but also really clears the doubts that linger from the infighting of the so-called UFO experts in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. And we're on a new platform now. We realize that consciousness is a hidden factor and probably the most important factor for quantum transitions.
Yeah, so what are you working on now as part of this whole evolutionary approach to ETs, UFO phenomena, whatever you want to call it? What's your next step, and where are you bringing the rest of us?
Well, right now I am continuing to head up a team that is continuously growing. We have 45 members who give support to experiencers and to help them to understand what is occurring in their lives. And we also have 5 consultants. 2 are psychiatrists, 3 are PhD psychologists who act as consultants to the team. It's a forward-looking team, not bound up in the nuts and bolts, and will not go back to that. So we are doing that. We are attempting to assist Les Velez. I don't know if you know who he is.
I don't know him.
But Lester Velez was an individual who had the position in MUFON before I took over. And he was the one who found Dr. Robert Lelouver. And Robert Lelouver carried out the Omega-3 project. Now, are you familiar with the Omega-1 and 2 projects?
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
No.
Well, Ray Hernandez often talks about them. He's, of course, the head of FREE. And they were projects that initially started at the University of Connecticut, and to determine if near-death experiencers shared any of the characteristics that they called it abduction experiencers.
This was Kenneth Ring, right? The Kenneth Ring.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Ring and Rosen.
Right. Okay,
and so they had some incredible findings that experiencers of contact have nearly all of the characteristics that near-death experiencers have. The only difference was that experiencers of contact had a little more trauma than near-death experiencers. So Les is trying to put together a team of individuals who will work on this Omega-4 project. Because, you know, in social science, it's always a good idea to continue to redo your scientific experiments. That's true of all science, actually, but more so in social science because of the variables in human behavior. So that's something that we're doing now, and just kind of trying to put our finger on the pulse of what is occurring now in terms of extraterrestrial communication. I've been really for the past 3 or 4 years focusing on communication by non-humans with humans in a variety of different modalities. So
what's in the nature of the communication? Because this is where I think we should, you know, go talk to people who are tuning in now, the nature of the communication, how the contact experience is actually changing from trauma, it seems, to one of integration. So talk about, well, really, I'm interested in what people are getting from the ETs, actually.
Yes, and people who overcome their fear of these non-humans who come in and come into the human's environment and often cause a fight or flight response. If they can learn to overcome that fear, and that's something I've been teaching people to do now for a few years, then they are more on an equal footing with the extraterrestrials. And if they can be friendly and welcoming, they will be able to receive answers to many of the questions that they have. So,
like what are they
like
getting?
what? Well,
yeah.
Well, MUFON did a study. I and Dr. Don C. Dundary were at the head of this study. We had several members of our team, many with PhDs, who worked on this study. And we had open-ended questions. We wanted to know what people were being told by these non-humans. And the most common question pertained to what we should know. And what they said is that their greatest concern about humans was our failure to be good stewards to our environment. They've been saying that. I have my records dating back to 1954, when they began sharing that message with individuals, but not many people back then, and mostly through telepathic downloads back then, not on craft. Now a lot of it is occurring on craft, but maybe just as downloads in your own home too, where they come into the environment, you can feel their presence. Of course, our visual range is not very wide, so they can come into our environment. They are vibrating at a higher frequency. Their atomic structure is much more energetic than ours. We're more solid, so we can see other humans, but not them. Sometimes you can just get a glimpse of them if you look a certain way, or if their vibrational frequency lowers. But so they're doing this. They have urged so many people to also give the message to humanity that nuclear weapons are dangerous. And I hypnotized Calvin Parker from the Charlie Hickson Calvin Parker Pascagoula abduction in 1973. Well, I hypnotized him last September. And what we discovered is that Calvin had been given messages, I believe, and that he needed to share that message with humanity. And he didn't. Calvin's father worked for the Nuclear Energy Commission. Calvin was digging. He was a driller and owned a drilling company and was working on bases, drilling with the intent for nuclear weapons. And so they were rather rough with him, the ETs. They showed him images of nuclear war, of people's faces melting off, of people starving, of things dying. And it's a message that they have been attempting to have the experiencers that they've been in contact with share with humanity for many, many years. But of course, one of the greatest problems is that we don't remember a lot of what they say when we return to this more solid environment.
Right, JJ, that's just a comment. Go ahead, JJ.
Yes, I remember talking to Dr. Jim Harder, who was the first person I recall to psychologically examine Calvin Parker and download as best possible the information from October 19th, 1973. The reason I remember the details, it happens to be my wedding anniversary. And I recall the excitement that was built around statements of faith, but statements of fear that surrounded some of the details that Calvin shared, not only with Dr. Harder, but later with Dr. Hynek himself. So, you know, this was a very classical case, and I'm so happy that you're continuing studies with Calvin Parker.
Yes, I think it's important because I repeatedly find that the extraterrestrials have been attempting to ask humans to, or direct humans for many, many years to share these other messages of their concern about our planet and about the sustainability of our planet. They are extremely concerned that we could become extinct if we don't listen, if we don't institute these changes. And some of them say that we're their experiment, that they planted our seed here on this planet. And they certainly don't want to see this beautiful planet destroyed and the life on it destroyed.
Right.
You say it so well. I'm so happy that you're connected with this case study. Has Calvin been, I know some of this perhaps is very sensitive, but has Calvin shown other details that are significant in terms of the what I would call the cosmic others concern that we are going the wrong direction with nuclear science of missile systems, etc., that would indicate we're taking a slide towards self-destruction? Are you able to say a little bit more about more recent briefings with him? Should we feel comfortable now that he can say more of the shocking experience he had in October 73?
Well, Calvin has learned that he has had additional experiences and that the one in 1973 was not the only one. He had one in 1995 as well. And there was additional information given then regarding his failure to carry this message to humans. And they treated him rather roughly. So that's about all that I can say at this time.
Well, what was the message, though? Was it just about taking care of the planet, or was there a deeper message that was?
The message was the need to denuclearize this planet, that the nuclear weapons are the greatest threat to humanity, in addition to our failure to be good stewards to our planet, and as a result, are placing our very environment in jeopardy.
Do you think the ETs are saying that for our well-being? I think they are, but also a bigger picture, the concern for the vibration throughout this time-space galaxy, in a sense?
Oh, when it comes to the use of nuclear weapons, the ETs have explained that our detonation of nuclear weapons will resonate out into the galaxy. And so, you know, a nuts and bolts scientist would say impossible. But if you understand that we are a multi-dimensional society and galactic neighborhood, then you understand that anything such as a nuclear weapon that will disrupt, that will tear a hole in the interdimensional fabric, will create a problem throughout the universe.
Wow. So nuclear weapons disrupt the whole time-space continuum and shakes worlds way beyond ours. Is this your experience, Dr. Hurtak?
I completely agree with what is being said. I think we are really at a crossroads of having to go away from the whole nuclear industry plan of weaponization in space. In fact, the late astronaut Mitchell, with two of my colleagues, worked on a space treaty that would prohibit weapons of mass destruction to be placed in outer space, with that in mind. So, Kathleen, you're right on target. Everything that you've said, we agree with in terms of we must have the honesty and the openness to be positive pioneers in outer space. We must be peacemakers rather than being seen as industrial warriors. And I think this is what Astronaut Mitchell wanted so many of his closest of friends to say, that we have to have a diplomacy of peace and show that we're peacemakers if our cosmic friends and the cosmic others want to work with us face to face.
Right. I just want to say, joining me, I didn't do a proper introduction, is Dr. J.J. Hurtak, who I would say is one of the most multi-dimensional travelers. His book, Keys of Enoch, is landmark in opening up doorways to other realities. It came from a higher consciousness experience where he was taken off planet for 3 days and met these higher beings that gave him this information for our time at this moment to uplift. So
this is more of a spiritual experience, and this is why I've been somewhat careful in putting this forth in the context of physical hardware contact. This is more mind to mind contact. And I think this is the new direction that we're going right now, is to see the importance of consciousness giving us the key to our multidimensionality.
Is that what you're finding, Kathleen? Because you, if you don't mind me sharing, you're a researcher and an experiencer, and you've been open about that. So how has this whole idea of consciousness affected your understanding of the phenomena, if we call it that?
Well, a point that I want to make is spirituality. And the message that was given to me and also given to other experiencers is that we are currently out of sync. Our technological development is out of sync with our spiritual development. And this presents a great problem, a great threat to the survival of humanity. And another goal of these non-human entities who are interacting with us is to attempt to encourage us to raise our spirit, our spiritual development, our spiritual selves. And I think part of what ETs do to experiencers, and free study and MUFON study confirmed this, is that experiencers become empathic. When you're empathic, it is a psychic sense of experiencing another person's emotions, maybe the health of their body. But if you feel another person's emotions as if they were your own, it will be impossible for humans to harm one another without harming themselves as well. And so I think that that's a very important thing that our non-human visitors have given to us. Another question that we asked is, do you have religious beliefs? And some questions about that, but then also, have your experiences changed your beliefs? And what we discovered is the majority of individuals said that they had become more spiritual. So that's a very good thing. By having contact with as many people as possible, it appears that these non-humans are being able to forward their agenda, and it appears to be a good one.
Right. It seems like there's a shift, though, in the whole experiencer, let's even call it abductee movement. When your aunt was taken with her husband, Barney Hill, and there's a picture of them behind you, which is great. that was a whole different mindset. That they sort of broke the glass ceiling with their experience and opened up a whole understanding of this phenomena. They were real pioneers, although taken against their will, perhaps, but something has shifted. I mean, Betty ended up sort of integrating it at the end of her life, I guess, and you were brought up with the phenomena. So something new is happening because, and what Rebecca said, there's an integration for those, at least those of us who have been in this field with like, okay, they're here. We're not questioning that. That's ridiculous to even question. Does the sun rise? I think it does, you know, but okay, they're here. We're integrating their presence with our human experience, and something new is possible because we are waking up to the reality that this is real and true and part of our lives. And so what do you feel this next stage looks like from your position? I'll ask you too, Dr. Hurtak, but what do you think, Kathleen, as we integrate it?
I think that more and more experiencers are reaching out to one another, and that this movement is moving around the world, not just in the United States. And people are joining together for CE5 communication. And so this is a very good thing. And some of the ET groups say that they would like to land, that if they were permitted to do so, but then they haven't been permitted to do that. And
who's not permitting them to do it? Who?
Well, the military and federal authorities are not permitting it.
Okay.
I do know of one group that wanted to land, I believe it was last February. They wanted to meet with the Pentagon, and they were not permitted to do this. And therefore they didn't show because they were not able to establish a meeting with leaders at the Pentagon. So that is just one example. But people are joining together and having direct contact with extraterrestrials. Either, you know, communication, I have to say, they might not be face to face in our environment. But as I said earlier, you can feel their presence. I have this happening myself. I have very strong tingling sensations through my body when these entities come into my office and communicate information. So, and when I speak with other experiencers, we both oftentimes feel this strong tingling in our bodies, starting through the crown chakra, just in communicating with one another.
Well, JJ has some experience with that. Go ahead, JJ.
I feel the next chapter is going to be on consciousness development. We recognize consciousness is the basis for both the mind as well as the material aspect of civilization. Both are traced to consciousness, capital C. And the studies that my wife and I have been involved with over the last 40-some years has looked at the psychological dimensions of what happens when consciousness is expanded by the human. And then we began to associate all of the sciences with the meta-sciences, or what we would call the feminine side of the mind that sees the greater implications that can come through integration of both, we say, the subjective and the objective, based upon love, harmony, and goodwill towards all of the human life forms as well as the non-human life forms. So this is the big picture that we're moving into. I think we're going beyond simply hardware and software into what I call lightware, capital L-I-G-H-T, lightware associations of the inner mind and what we'll call a whole new direction of consciousness physics.
Right. Is your, oh, go ahead. No, it's,
I was just going to say, I agree. Consciousness is the key. Consciousness is everything.
it is. I was just wondering if your experience is getting stronger, more powerful, more direct over the years.
It has. It has, and particularly since I worked with a man named Kevin Briggs, who from the time he was 8 years old has had either direct communication face-to-face or more recently telepathic communication. And it was Kevin who taught me really how to communicate with these non-humans at a different level and to, overcome the fear. So for so many years, I was completely wrapped up in the fear and the feeling that I was being used and abused, that I was a lab rat, what all of the early UFO investigators were writing and saying. And it took a long time for me to overcome those feelings. But over the past 10 years, I have had a more positive relationship. I lost my fear of these non-humans. I was healed from illness in 2012 by them. It was an illness that I'd had for a number of years that was debilitating. I've been completely well, except for getting the flu and that sort of thing ever since. So it has improved. I would like for it to improve more so that I can have more communication, because I have a lot of questions that still go unanswered.
And the young people that you've been in contact with, such as this young Kenneth, do they describe a cosmic family that they're part of? Are they a spokesperson for another group of non-humans, or in general terms, how are we to look at a familial relationship, if we can call it, well, starting from those who have a natural gift or affinity for contact with the higher worlds or non-human worlds? Do they see themselves as spokespersons on an individual level or on a collective level, or both?
I think both, because they're speaking, many are speaking on an individual level, but they want to connect with other groups. They want to spread this message worldwide. And that was one of the objectives that the extraterrestrials that Kevin Briggs speaks with had. And so he initially called together a small group of researchers to investigate his experiences, and we were permitted for 2 years to ask questions, and much of the answers that we received were about consciousness, but also science and a number of different things. And so the objective was to expand that group and to continue to expand the group and the message, so that at some point there will be people around this planet who are on the same page and who are working toward the same goal. And the ETs are in favor of that, because they state that they have attempted to work with our governments unsuccessfully. And if we are to bring about change for the better, then they're going to have to do it through one by one, through the experiencers that they make contact with.